Oh, what a knobbo. Are you trapped inside? Have you been quarantined? Being forced to take holiday from your job? Don't worry, I'm here to entertain you in your quarantine time. I mean, you should probably worry. Like, there's a horrible virus out there. I'm gonna stop talking. I'm here to entertain you. I'm not here to add to your worries. Wait, what are we talking about today? Yeah, this isn't anything to be worried about. This isn't the video called The Great Recession. This is all about the 5 biggest startup scams, which probably haven't affected you in any way. And Danny has added to the title here, allegedly, because don't sue me, bro. Okay, if you're wondering what goes on here, Danny writes the scripts. I read them and react to them. Occasionally I give them a little slap. Because why not? This is double-sided. Oh my god, how long is this? It's 3 double-sided pages, Danny. I need a chair. It's not always easy to figure out the exact defining moment when a promising new venture loses sight of its original honest ambitions and crosses the line into scam territory. Unless you're Theranos, then it was a scam from day one. Unless you're Bernie Madoff, then it was a scam from day one. Unless you're unnamed pyramid scheme company, which you've definitely heard of, but I won't mention for legal reasons, then it's always been a scam since day one. Alarm bells should have been ringing straight away when I was first asked to invest all my life savings in scoundrel and charlatan slightly wonky pyramid opportunity, but I didn't heed the advice of my friends at the time. Ba-da-bum-bum. In the case of Theranos, oh my god, I should read these ahead. The path to deception is a little more fuzzy. We covered this, one of the biggest startup scandals, in a previous Business Blaze episode, which you shouldn't go check out right now because then you have to leave this video and that makes YouTube sad. And I'm gonna link to it below. It'll probably just be a rickroll. But you get the impression that the young Elizabeth Holmes at least started off with a desire to genuinely bring about a revolution in the blood testing industry. Oh, I suppose she did, but it became dodgy really quickly when she realized that it wasn't possible but continued making a $1 billion company. And then she spoke like this. It's just not clear at what point she looked herself in the mirror and admitted that she was fraudulently raking in millions of dollars of investment for a bread maker that didn't even make bread. There are other examples where a new startup actually enjoys initial success on a completely legitimate footing, but then the founder goes and gets a little bit carried away with his own good fortune. And that's the perfect place to begin the story of Silicon Valley's wildest party animal, Rothenberg Ventures. Rothenberg does sound like a party animal. Mike Rothenberg grew up in 1990s in Georgetown, in Texas. The son of strict but loving Jehovah's Witness parents, his childhood was a little weird. Mike and his 2 siblings were allowed to watch PG-13 movies at home, but only after his mum and dad had edited out anything that might pollute their young innocent minds. It's PG-13, what could the possibly... PG-13 I assume, because we have different ratings in the UK, is like you have to be 13 to see it, right? What could possibly be in there? That must have been a tricky task in the 1990s, and you can't help but wondering if there was any film left after Mike's parents had finished with The Scissors. After graduating Stanford and earning his MBA from Harvard, bloody hell, Mike moved to Silicon Valley and got to work on shaking up the stiff and stuffy venture industry. I also like to think that away from the prying eyes of his parents, he also spent crazy evenings enjoying full uncut versions of classic films like The Goonies. Guess what, folks? I've never seen The Goonies. I don't even know what it's about. Really, at all. I mean, I've heard of it. Mike launched Rothenberg Ventures in 2012, setting out his new mission to quickly inject big investment funds into exciting new seed-stage tech startups right across Silicon Valley. Intriguingly, he raised the initial $5 million to get Rothenberg Ventures off the ground by simply asking a list of 200 friends, family members, and former classmates to stick their hands in their one informer employee. These are double-sided, but that's an unfortunate continuance, to stick their hands in their one former employee. That, you know, hashtag me too. It was actually pockets. I'm going to put these down so I don't get confused again and get in trouble. Which kind of suggests that he was either very persuasive or he just had very rich friends, family members, and former classmates. He got an MBA from Harvard, I think. One, he went to Harvard, it's super expensive, so he probably was rich before. Then he went to Harvard. And hung out with lots of other rich people doing an MBA at Harvard. He must have been doing something right, as Rothenberg Ventures went on to become early investors in such major frontier technology, there's a Danny's quotes there, success stories as iPad point-of-sale system Revel, 3D data platform Matterport, and financial services company Robinhood, I've heard of Robinhood. Don't use it. I don't even know if it's available in Europe. Most notably, Rothenberg was an early investor in space exploration technology company SpaceX, founded by Elon Musk. He didn't just invest in big business. One of the reasons why smaller business startups were keen to hook up with Rothenberg Ventures is because that he didn't muck about. There wasn't very much pesky red tape to get in the way of things. I feel like this gets people into trouble though. Like, lack of due diligence seems to be why a lot of people invested in Theranos, even though it was basically just a bread maker with buttons, extra buttons on it. One founder of a small New York-based venture which produced custom 3D printed shoe insoles recalls the time that she cold-called Mike seeking investment for her startup following one very brief telephone call. Then there was a quick meetup which lasted less than an hour, and then suddenly she had 100 grand in the bank. Rothenberg Ventures quickly attracted the interest and confidence of big league investors, and at one point had more than 100 companies in its own investment portfolio. It was doing well, but then things turned a little bit sour. Yeah, I'm wondering where this goes wrong. It sounds, risky investments, but it's Silicon Valley. Where's the problem going to come? And 100 grand, I mean, it's a lot of money, but it's not for these guys. We should stress that Mike Rothenberg has never admitted to any wrongdoing, and we'll just say here that, of course, this is all speculation. But the company did come under investigation from the US Securities and Exchange Commission in 2016, during which time nearly all the senior executives abandoned the company. Rothenberg was charged with the misappropriation of millions of dollars worth of investment funds. Again, he says that he didn't do any of this. I assume it's ongoing. We're just saying what the SEC is doing. Don't sue me. The SEC alleged that Mike had blown the best part of $7 million on funding his own extravagant lifestyle and indulgences. Allegedly. It sounds as if by this stage he was doing a lot more than just inviting a few old pals around to watch The Goonies, all the slightly rude bits left in. Again, I should really know what The Goonies is. Hey Siri, what's The Goonies? Hey Siri, what's The Goonies?
Co-produced and directed by Richard Donner from a screenplay by Chris Columbus, based on a story by executive producer Steven Spielberg.
The most notable thing I heard about that was that it was made by a guy called Christopher Columbus. He's like, well, my surname's Columbus, I'll call him Christopher. Oh. Okay, that didn't really add anything useful to this video, did it? Let's just carry on. On top of that, it turns out that one of the companies receiving the lion's share of investment from Rothenberg Ventures was a virtual reality production company called River Studios. Don't see what the problem is. The new outfit created virtual reality videos for the likes of, is it Björk?
Björk Guðmundsdóttir.
I couldn't name a single Björk song.
Björk.
And Coldplay, I like Coldplay. And they received an investment of $5 million from Rothenberg, which was approximately 50 times the size of a typical Rothenberg investment. The only problem was that River Studios actually belonged to Mike Rothenberg. Oh, I see. So he's invested in his own company with investors' money. Don't see what the problem is. And he reportedly allegedly, hadn't disclosed to investors that he was pumping all of the money back into his own private venture. That probably seems a little bit sketchy. If I was an investor in that, I'd be like, Mike, are you investing in your own companies and not telling us? Allegedly. Mike was also becoming deeply unpopular with his own employees who were allegedly failing to get reimbursed for major business expenses which they had been asked to pay for with their own credit cards. Yeah, that would piss me off. One former employee claims that they were being treated like children, and were children with credit cards though, and were expected to get personal approval from Mike himself before spending even the tiniest business expense. So while Mike Rothenberg was plowing hundreds of thousands of dollars into new ventures on the strength of the briefest of chats and the current wind's direction, his staff were required to seek personal permission if they needed to spend $5 on an Uber ride. Mike stepped down from his own company in 2018 and reached a settlement with the SEC the following year. And again, it was a settlement, so, nothing was proven, nothing went wrong. He settled for something we don't really know, allegedly. What?
Björk.
Allegedly. The SEC allegedly, that he was alleged to have. They said Mike Rothenberg had orchestrated a years-long massive fraud and posed a substantial risk of loss to investors with $18.8 million misappropriated. That is a quote from the SEC. I don't believe this or say this myself. Mike admitted no guilt, but agreed to pay a total of $31 million in fines to the SEC. Someone at this point might say guilty conscience, Mike. And accepted a ban of 5 years from the brokerage and investment industry. So I don't even know why we're including him in this video. He's clearly completely innocent. I'm glad. When I wrote this to Danny and I wanted to do startup scams, I was like, Danny, please couch the language very heavily because I don't want to get sued. I don't even have at the time of making this, I don't even have advertising turned on this channel, so that would suck. Boxtie, Bouxtie. I'm not gonna look it up because I can't be bothered. According to an interview printed in Forbes magazine in 2016, Richard Branson was partly to blame for this one, but don't believe everything you read. Good, I like Richard Branson. I wouldn't want him to be involved in anything dodgy because he's a legend. 39-year-old, Croatian-born entrepreneur, Renato Libric apparently met up with Richard Branson in the UK to discuss Libric's new startup, Bowtie. Danny's written here that it's pronounced Bowtie. Danny, it would have been helpful if you put the pronunciation guide when it's first written. Oh! Libric claims that Branson had advised him to go to Silicon Valley and seek his fortune. Go forth, young man, go to the valley, and seekest thou fortune. Because his vision was too big for the UK and Europe to handle. If he was making bow ties, I'm already gonna call bullshit on this. I mean, alleged bullshit. If there's any shred to that story, and there probably isn't, then I suspect Branson was just politely telling Libric to piss off to Silicon Valley and get as far away from him as possible. Because the truth is that bow tie didn't seem very big at all. In fact, it seemed a little bit crap.
Allegedly.
It was really just a gift card app aimed at retailers. Libric's company would be the middleman, leasing out the smartphone app to retailers who could then encourage their customers to use the app to order personalized gift cards for their friends and family. Who would use this? Why don't people already have gift cards? Gift cards are not broken. There was nothing particularly amazing or distinctive about Bowtie other than users could order the custom gift card straight from their phones and quickly add a special photograph or message. This was in 2016? Hasn't Amazon been doing this forever? Or like something similar? In fact, it was never destined to set the world on fire, certainly not in 2016. Yeah, Renato, you were only like 10 years, 15 years too late. This would have been a good idea in the original .com bubble. But Renato Libric was still determined to get things moving to Silicon Valley and succeeded in drumming up a few $100,000 in the first couple of rounds of funding. Oh my god, I guess this was 2016. I feel like that was a big peak of just people throwing money at the most random Okay, however, Libric was clearly thinking bigger. God knows why. A Las Vegas company called Moose Run was considering investing $1.5 million into Bowtie, but they first wanted to see some evidence that Libric had already pulled in substantial investment. They were also hoping that Bowtie could potentially be the target for a big league buyout, which would give everyone at Moose Run a nice healthy payday. Yeah, isn't that what they all hope for? It's like, that's how investment works. The very same Forbes article that we mentioned earlier seemed to indicate that three big corporations, they were allegedly lined up to buy out Bowtie, and Libric was happy to show off his business banking statements, which revealed that they had over $2 million sitting happily in the bank, which it acquired from existing investors. Congratulations, you acquired money from an investor. Your product your actual business has made no money. This seemed to be good enough for Moose Run, who decided to go ahead with their $1.5 million investment into this gift card app thing. It does sound pretty bad. Like, what is the USP here? What's that unique selling proposition? $1.5 million? Really? However, there were a couple of problems. Firstly, Forbes had only printed what Libric had told them in an interview. And much like the Richard Branson story, it turned out to be complete bollocks. It's like, yeah, I expect a magazine like Forbes to do better due diligence. Although the story, as I've heard from like friends who've been featured in magazines and stuff like this, it's always not naming names. I certainly wouldn't name Forbes as one of these, but it's like, it seems like it's a bit dodgy behind the scenes about what gets featured and why, and obviously, allegedly, due diligence can sometimes be lacking. There was no evidence to back up Libric's claim that any company was remotely interested in buying out Bowtie. It would have been a terrible idea anyway. The profit margins on a middleman venture like this are always going to be incredibly low. Secondly, it turns out that Libric had falsified his bank statements by quite a bit in order to impress Moose Run. It's like, yeah, well, the business is not great. That's something for investors to decide on. But when you're allegedly falsifying bank statements, I feel like you're moving from, let's try and get some money let's try and persuade people that this is a good business idea, to crime. That $2 million turned out to be just over $7,600 in the real world, that existed outside of Littbridge's wacky head. What's more, on the very same day that he banked the big check from Moose Run, he transferred $130,000 of it to his own personal account. How can you be doing this and think you're going to get away with it? Maybe he just wanted to buy a few gifts for his friends and family to celebrate the big deal. And if he used his own shitty app, he could have done it all from his phone, attach a nice jolly photograph of himself to the gift card. Alas, he probably wouldn't be allowed a smartphone in prison, and that's exactly where he ended up. In 2018, he pled guilty to a single count of wire fraud, receiving a $1.5 million fine and 3 years in jail. Oh, dude. Can you imagine that? It's like, oh, what did I do? Well, I told some people that I had some money that I didn't, and now I'm in prison for 3 years. Don't be a criminal. Don't falsify your bank statements. And then get someone to give you $1.5 million. That's a pretty substantial fraud. Alleged fraud. No, he went to prison. I think I can say it was a fraud. It's like, yeah, he's guilty. Way back in the dark ages of 1998, even downloading a small grainy photograph of Simon Whistler from the internet would take far more time and effort than it could have ever realistically been worth. A picture of 11-year-old Simon. Were there even digital photos on the internet back then? Maybe. I don't know. I was 11, it was my first year of secondary school. There were computers and stuff, like I had a computer at home, but definitely not a digital camera. The very idea of doing something as ambitious as watching a whole Rick Astley video online would have been ludicrous, and I'll link to that below. It would probably take more time to load it up than it would for the original song to be written and recorded in the first place. But a man called Michael Fenn was planning an online video revolution. Pixelon was founded in San Juan Capistrano? Maybe? It sounds like Italian food. And promised to deliver faster and higher quality distribution of video over the still fledgling internet. Michael Fenn was the founder and chief technology officer behind Pixelon. He had assembled a team of world-leading engineers to change the way that we view Rick Astley videos forever, and he wasn't gonna let us down. Good to know. I get the feeling he's gonna let us down because of the subject of this video. The concept would probably be quite useful in a lot of ways too, and Pixelon quickly generated around $30 million in early investment funding. In 1998, even Captain Picard was taking an interest. Paramount Pictures had decided they wanted to make use of the new technology for the online marketing of the new Star Trek film Insurrection, which was definitely not my favorite Star Trek movie, but it was the one after what I believe to be the greatest Star Trek movie of all time, Star Trek First Contact. I don't know, I think people generally disagree with that, but it was a fine movie. I would rate it highly. Hey Siri, what does the movie Star Trek First Contact get on Rotten Tomatoes?
I'm here.
Yeah, I know you're there. It'd be nice if you answer my questions. They were doing so well that by 1999, Michael Fenn decided to splash...
I found this on the web for Hey Siri, what is the movie Star Trek? Check it out.
Things were going so well that by 1999, Michael Fenn decided to splash out on a massive launch at the MGM Grand Casino in Las Vegas. The event, labeled iBash 99, featured a stellar lineup of performers including Kiss, Faith Hill, Dixie Chicks, Tony Bennett, and one of many special reunion appearances by The Who, the legendary rock band, who even back then were probably about 85 years old and already split up and reunited about 27 times. Yes, The Who are good though. The total cost of this launch party was rumored to be in the region of $16 million. Holy shit. Which is slightly worrying considering that this was over half of the total investment pulled in by the company so far. But maybe it will be worth it. I get the feeling it's not going to be worth it. I mean, I feel like if I was at that party, you'd be like, totally worth it. But it's not my money. The idea was to show off the new Pixelon technology by streaming the party live over the internet, as well as showing a live feed of the show on the Astrovision screen in Times Square in New York City. Things didn't quite go to plan. Not a single frame of the party showed up on the giant screen, and nearly everyone trying to watch at home just ended up getting an error message on their chunky 90s monitors. Whoops-a-daisy. Some PC users did manage to get a few chunks of the party, but only by using alternate streaming software from Microsoft. Whoops. And also, they didn't stop Microsoft from streaming it because you're promoting your own streaming technology. The hangover from this $16 million bash was pretty big. It transpired that the Pixelon technology didn't really work at all. Michael Fenn may have taken the title of Chief Technology Officer, but he had zero experience with technology. That was probably an error. In fact, his name wasn't even Michael Fenn. Oh no, we're getting into really sketchy territory. He was in fact a convicted felon. Oh named David Kim Stanley, who had been on the run, living in his car for 2 years when he first showed up in California. Dude, if you're a convicted felon who is on the run from the law, do you really want to do something so public? Like, if I was a convicted felon, the last thing I'd do, like, you know I'm not a criminal from some past life where my name wasn't Simon Whistler, because the last thing I would do would be plaster my face all over the internet in 17 different YouTube channels. Or maybe I'm just in really deep cover, and people are like, oh my god, that's that crime guy. Oh, he skipped bail in Virginia after being found guilty of swindling over $1 million from elderly parishioners at the church where his dad had served as a pastor. Oh, what a knobbo. When all this eventually came to light, he stepped down from Pixelon and handed himself into the police, while his former company eventually filed for bankruptcy in 2002. David Kim Stanley ended up serving 8 years in prison. If the guy who basically stole or took 1.5 million got 3, 8 feels light for this dude. He got 8 years in prison, for his original fraud conviction, but he curiously has his own small YouTube channel now. Wow! Forget everything I said before. Although, then he wasn't on the run, right? So he's out of prison. Oh yeah, he must be out of prison now. I gotta look this dude up. We should collab on something, David Kim Stanley.
I want to express my personal thanks on behalf of...
I am so confused by this. All I can find is a channel called David Stanley, which has 7 subscribers, and it's got something about this Pixelon thing, the face-off movie trailer promo that he digitized in 1999. Surely this can't be the same dude. It's got 7 subscribers. This is super weird. It's honestly not worth seeking out because it's mainly just an odd selection of his baffling home video clips. Yes. I'm so confused, and I should read these ahead. And even 30 years later, we still don't see anything from that iBash party. Disappointing. So, we can't watch the legacy of a streaming video company run by a wanted fugitive under a false identity who didn't have the slightest clue about streaming video. Again, this guy, absolutely criminal. But whoever invested 30 million in his company, it's like, wow, you didn't want a scan of his passport or something, or his identity card? You're giving him $30 million, dudes. Oh, bonus DVD extras. Bada bum bum. I mentioned earlier that Mike Rothenberg, who was he? Oh, he was the Goonies guy, could treat himself to watching an uncut version of the Goonies when he got old enough to move to Silicon Valley, and some dedicated film buffs or pedants may have already pointed out in the comments that the Goonies was never a PG-13 film in the first place. It was awarded the milder rating of PG. But the world's first rating system is completely bonkers anyway. The Goonies often crops up in a list of PG films that should have been rated PG-13, along with the surprisingly dark Return to Oz and the surprisingly suggestive Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Yeah, I remember Roger Rabbit. That was a weird movie. Controversially, the first film to be ever given a PG-13 rating was 1984 film Red Dawn, which probably should have been given an R rating as it's often reckoned to be one of the most violent films ever made. God damn. Meanwhile, I'm struggling to see why films as gory and as terrifying as Jaws and Poltergeist were passed with a PG rating all those years ago. I think I've seen Jaws. It was a long time ago. I've never even heard of Poltergeist. Whenever we get into movies, everyone's like, how do you know all these movies? It's like, I don't know. I just don't watch that many movies. I don't watch that much stuff. I make stuff. I'm convinced that film censors often just leave the tape running and then nip out for a quick pint. One place you can view some footage from the doomed iBash— oh, this is another bonus, sorry. The doomed iBash party of 1999 is on a DVD released by The Who in 2006 entitled The Vegas Job. Naturally, you only get to see bits featuring The Who because it's their DVD. And it does drag on a bit because they keep having to sit down after every song to catch their breath. They are so old. But the DVD is notable for featuring an extra bonus feature, a short interview with David King Stanley himself, which was filmed shortly after his real identity was exposed and before his imprisonment. Although he seems reasonably remorseful about his actions, he also reveals that anyone can fake a new identity by just putting 200 pounds of weight on and dyeing your hair a different color. Handy tip to remember if you ever find yourself on the run from the police after $1 million swindle. Business Plays, providing you all the information you need to know for your future life of crime. Not really, FBI. Thank you for watching. I've been Simon. This has been Business Blaze. Smash that like button below if you enjoyed this video. Smash that dislike button if you didn't, but you watched all the way to the end and are a legend because of that. So why would you dislike it? Maybe you hate watched it. People can hate watch. I understand. I'm fairly annoying. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Ooh, sign up to my newsletter where I let you know about secret new projects. It's linked to below. Thank you.